Hello and welcome to the Art Class Curator podcast. I am Cindy Ingram, your host and the founder of Art Class Curator and the Curated Connections Library. We're here to talk about teaching art with purpose and inspiration, from the daily delights of creativity to the messy mishaps that come with being a teacher. Whether you're driving home from school or cleaning up your classroom for the 15th time today, take a second, take a deep breath, relax those shoulders, and let's get started. Hello, it's Cindy Ingram from Art Class Curator, and I am back for day number 5 of our free email course, Beyond the Surface, how to get students to dive deeper into works of art. If you have not yet signed up for the course to get the emails in your inbox every day, you can do so at artclasscurator.com/surface. And that will get you part of the lessons. And for every lesson this week, we are doing a podcast supplemental lesson to go along with the course. So today's lesson is called Enthralling Experiences, Get Students Engaged and Keep Them Engaged. And I have to tell you that although art discussion is just about my favorite thing in the world, there is nothing to me more exciting than talking about a work of art with students. If you do it every class period or very, very, very regularly, it can start to get a little repetitive. When I first started teaching, this was in 2007, I was teaching community college, and I decided for every single class period, we would start with a work of art discussion. And I would just pick something interesting. I would pick something related, usually related to whatever we were talking about that day. And I would lead a discussion. And, it started out great, but because I was doing it every single class, it did start to feel almost like a chore. And, the sparks of excitement were not quite as prevalent. And, the energy was kind of lacking. Also, at the time, I was teaching community college at the same time as working full-time. So I was doing that in the evenings. So I really started to realize that I had to change it up. I had to add writing components. I had to add interactive activities. I had to maybe, move the discussion to another part of the class period, instead of starting every day the same. So that's when I started to experiment with adding more interactive activities into my lessons. And I would add writing components, or I would add some group work components, kinesthetic activities, and different things to really explore the artworks in different ways. And I think it's important that we think about all of the different learners in our classroom, the ones that like to be moving around, the ones that are more introspective, the ones who are more creative, the ones who, like to physically touch something and engage with something, the ones who want to have social conversations about things, the ones that really want to dive deep and be self-aware and think about themselves. There's all sorts of different types of learners and different interests in your classroom that if we just do a discussion, we're going to miss some of those amazing connections to be had. So there are so many different ways to connect with works of art. And in today's lesson, in lesson 5, we have a list for you in the email. So make sure you're signed up at artclasscurator.com/surface. But I'm going to go through some of the main categories that we cover in that email and give you some things to think about in terms of ways to engage your students with works of art. And one of the things we haven't talked about very much this week is grade levels, because we often get questions about, how is this going to be different for a second grader versus a high schooler or things like that? And the truth is, everything that we've covered up until this point works 100% as well with a kindergartner as with a 12th grader. You ask the same types of questions. You show the same types of art. It's just the conversation is a little more sophisticated the older that they get. The connections that they make are more deep. The connections that they make to the context of the artwork and things like that all gets more elaborate as they get older. But all of these activities that I'm going to talk with you about today can be done with just about any grade level. And that's what's so beautiful about this work, is it really can work for anybody. The only thing is, your writing prompts, your kindergartners are not going to be able to write very well. So maybe you have them write one sentence instead of a paragraph. But the students can really do this work and have fun with this work, no matter the grade. So first, we're going to talk about the different types of learning activities, and then we will talk about how to pair them with the right work of art. Our first category in the lesson today is art making activities. So these are amazing because you know that your kids come into your class every day. What are we going to make? What are we going to make? What are we going to make? And a lot of the barriers that keep teachers from doing this more regularly is because they're worried about that expectation from the students that you have to make art every single day. And so drawing activities and art making activities connected with works of art allow you to do your art connection work and, scratch that itch for your students of the art making. So one of my favorite things to do is really to have students draw the works of art. This works really well for like three-dimensional forms and sculptures because they can really work on their proportions, they can work on shading, they can do that kind of stuff. But it also, at the same time, they're looking really closely at the work of art. As they're drawing, they're noticing more details that they might not have noticed before. So I do this with the Nkisi and Kandi power figure. And they're these sculptures that they're covered in nails, and they were like hunting spirits. So when a treaty was made or a promise, there was a nail that was hammered into the sculpture. And then if that treaty was broken or that promise was broken, the power figure would send out this hunting spirit to punish the person who had broken that promise. So there's a facial expression that they all kind of have. There's this posture with the shoulders kind of slightly forward, the hands on the hips. Like there's this, the more they look at it, the more they can find the meaning, the more they can think about it, the more they can be curious, the more they can wonder. And so that then when you have your discussion, they've spent this great quality time working on it. Another thing that you can do is like have them sculpt the artwork. So you can take some modeling clay and build the sculpture. There's one artwork we have in the Curator Connections library that is this Peruvian ruler, and it's really kind of boxy, not like ruler, like leader. And it's kind of boxy. So we have one of the activities is to build it using blocks or empty boxes. So you can experiment that way with recreating the art. Another art making activity that was super prominent in the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, was people posing like artworks and taking pictures. That's another one way of creating a new work of art from an original, and allows you to connect with it in various ways. And there's plenty of other ideas like taking a theme or a technique or something from the artwork and experimenting with it. One of the examples we give in the lesson email today was asking students to draw drawings of time moving slowly in response to Dali's persistence of memory. You can do that after you've looked at the artwork, or you could have them draw something before you look at the artwork. The example we give in the email was the Straw Mannequin by Goya. You could give them a drawing prompt of drawing a mannequin being thrown high into the air. So they draw that, and then they see Goya's version of the same thing. Another of our very favorite activities is a drawing description game where you set up your room so that one student can see the artwork and one cannot. And the one who can see it has to draw it, or has to describe it to the person who can't see it. And the person who can't see it has to draw it based on the description. Really excellent for description skills, communication skills, and things like that. Another activity that you can try is a memory drawing activity. So you have them look at the artwork for an extended period of time, 5 minutes or so, and all they can do is look at it. They can't take notes. They can't write anything down. You can't talk about it. They just straight up look at it. And then you have them draw it from memory, take it, and then you have to take it completely off the screen so they can't see it anymore. You can take that activity and vary it a lot of ways, like having them work in groups to list everything that's in there, or they have to write a written description of it. So there's other ways you can take that memory activity and go different ways with it as well. Blind contour drawings, another art making activity that you can do with works of art. Things that you're already doing in your classroom, just how do you use it with a work of art instead of maybe, the blind contour drawing of a tennis shoe or another student. There's been research that says that students who visit the museum have higher standardized test scores in writing. And that's because when you are looking at art, you're using all of the same skills that you're using when you're interpreting text. And you're using narrative, and you're using inferencing, and you're using all of those English language arts skills. So we can take that even farther, and we can have writing activities with works of art. And that possibilities are completely endless when it comes to writing activities. So whether it's just writing a few sentences of description of the artwork, maybe it is journaling about the emotions that they see in the artwork and how they can connect to them. Maybe they're writing scripts between characters in the artworks, or letters to characters in the artworks, or letters from characters in the artworks, letters to the artist. You can have them interview the artist or the artwork and have fake interviews. You can have them write poems. We have tons of poetry templates available on our website, and then also in the Curated Connections library. But, cinquain poems, autobiographical poem, haiku poems, diamante poems, shape poems, character poems, all sorts of different poetry templates that allow students to explore the works of art in a more creative way. Now, you run the risk of doing too much writing. If they're having to write a poem every single time they're looking at a work of art, that's going to start to feel like, okay, not this again. So you want to make sure you do a variety of these types of activities, and it's not sort of the same every time. Another way to make this more fun for the students is to try it in groups, or in pairs, having them write the poems together. The haiku poem especially is kind of challenging, especially with the syllables. Might consider having them work together for that. And our last category in the emails lesson today is music, theater, and movement activities. So we are exploring works of art through the other arts. So theater, you can act like the artwork. You can have students develop a script between the two of them and then act it out. You can do a living picture where they pose like the artwork and even use props and costumes and things like that. Take it further and make that photograph that I mentioned earlier. You can have students write songs about the artwork, whether they're writing song lyrics or they are tapping out a beat of what they think it might sound like. I've had a great time playing music, classical music for students, and asking them to draw what they think, if they were to create an artwork about the song, what would it look like? That's really fun as well. And then doing the same for an artwork is looking at the artwork and saying, what would the song be? What would the song sound like? You can have students create interpretive dances around works of art. I always love to do that. And it's awkward, but it can be really funny, and it doesn't have to be this, serious academic thing. That it can be just playful and fun. So that's just a taste of the many activities that you could do with works of art. We've played scavenger hunts with works of art, played Would You Rather games with works of art, all sorts of things that you can try and play, matching games, things where you hang artworks around the room and you use Post-its and they share their thoughts on Post-its, cut up the artwork, pictures of the artwork, and only have them interpret a small piece. There's the sky's the limit here, and then there's so many fun activities that you can do. Now, how do you pick a work of art or how do you pick an activity to fit best with a work of art? And what I usually do is just spend some time with the work of art myself, think about what it's about, think about possible stories, think about the elements and principles that are used, and then picking an activity specific for that artwork. So if that artwork has a really strong emotional component, you might be more likely to choose a poetry exercise. Now, if the artwork has a really strong use of one or more of the elements of art, you might do some sort of visual analysis, or something like where they draw the composition lines or something like that. If it's an artwork that's full of stuff with all sorts of different things going on, then you might have them pick one part of the painting, or do one of those where you cut it up and they only get to see one part. So there's a lot of different things that you can do, and it's super fun to be creative. Now, if you don't have time to be creative, if you don't have time to figure all of this out, never fear. We have tons of these on our blog at artclasscurator.com, so you can check out the blog for a lot of ideas. If you just click on the Art Appreciation Activities button at the top of any of the blog pages, you'll get lots of ideas and artworks there. And then also our Curated Connections library in the membership, every single one of those 150 plus works of art have multiple activities to go with them. So they're already ready for you to go with any worksheets that you need, any PowerPoint slides that you need, all ready to go in that membership. You can get more information about that at artclasscurator.com/join. All right, so that's it for today. Your assignment for today's lesson is to pick a work of art and pick an activity and do it. So you can hop into our Facebook group, the Art Class Curator Collective, and share your activity plan at artclasscurator.com/BTS22. And then after you lead your activity, you can come back and tell us how it went. But that thread will be an awesome resource for you to check out everybody else's ideas and give you some more things to think about. So we can't wait to hear all of your amazing ideas at artclasscurator.com/BTS22. So technically that is the last lesson of Beyond the Surface, but we do have one bonus lesson tomorrow called There Just Is Not Time, making the time for experiences that students and admins and teachers will remember. So check us out tomorrow in your inbox. And of course, if you have not yet signed up for the emails, you can get those at artclasscurator.com/surface. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening to the Art Class Curator podcast. Help more art teachers find us by reviewing the podcast and recommending it to a friend. Do you have a work of art that changed your life? If so, send me your art story. You can send it to support@artclasscurator.com or leave a voicemail to 202-996-7972. Get more inspiration for teaching art with purpose by subscribing to our newsletter, Your Weekly Art Break. Recent topics include how to support English language learners, why we should teach artworks from Black artists even if it isn't February, and how to deal with teacher burnout. Subscribe at artclasscurator.com/artbreak to receive 6 free art appreciation worksheets. Today's art quote comes from Christo, and he says, "The work of art is a scream of freedom." Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.